Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Well, howdy. I'm Bob and I'm an alcoholic. I am thrilled to be here. I am telling you that I've had a fantastic weekend so far. And I don't, when I introduce myself like that, I don't usually give my last name because I have a tendency not to be able to remember not to do it when I'm not supposed to. I have opportunities to speak at professional things, representing AA a little bit, trying to present them with information, and I just have a tendency to keep running it on, you know, and so I had to drop back to I pick up bad habits just thinking about them. I don't even have to do them. And good habits, it takes me a while to do those, 24, 25 years, whatever. But I am so thrilled to be here, and I want to thank the committee, everybody, for asking me to come up here. And Jim had called me a couple years ago to come up, and it got down between a fellow out of Denver, I believe, and myself, and they chose him, and I didn't get a resentment. And then I was talking to all kinds of people on the phone, Michael and them, and have you ever tried to picture who it is that you're going to see when you get there? It never matches for me. It just never has. And we got here on Thursday, and Joanna got a hold of us, and she told me not to talk about the driving or anything. She asked me to, and I'm going to honor that. But hypothetically, if I were picked up in a town in a country other than my own, there might be somebody who would pick you up, and they had to call and say they were going to be a little bit late because they got in a wreck. And so then when they did show up, they got you in the car, and on your way across town, explains about all the other wrecks she had been in. And I'm so glad it wasn't Joanne. Or else we might have been afraid. She's been a very good sport. We've had a ton of fun. I've just enjoyed myself so much. And we went over to a house. This speaks for Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon, what this thing does for us. We went over to these people's house, and it was Wendell and Brenda, to their house. They invited us in there, and we had a potluck, and they had a little girl running around in there, and they just trusted us, and that just speaks volumes to me. Sunday morning. Everybody else has got me primed. Boy, going into that house and being welcomed. I mean, here you come from another country. They call you up because you probably have some kind of weird story, and then they invite you into their house and let you be around their children, and everybody just treats you like gold. And that only happens in this program. I have it happen all the time, and do the same thing in my house. There's no law. I don't even know if I have keys for my house. I think I had someone. I moved in there 19 years ago. But I always tell people, if I'm not there, go in, make yourself comfortable, but please make the beds and stuff when you're done. And hopefully change the sheets. The speakers that you've had here this weekend have been fantastic. I've just enjoyed them so much. They really have raised the bar and as to what I might do today, and I hope I just don't set y'all back too far. I hope you all have sponsors to help you out. I saw an example yesterday, and I thought, well, maybe I ought to try that, but I can't sing that well, Angie. My sponsor has told me that just on the way up here. And so maybe later on we'll have him do his rendition, some rap song, I think. He's no cowboy. He has several. But I just enjoyed all the speakers, and I especially like listening to the Al-Anon and the Alateen. I just love that. And I would like to just recognize all the Al-Anons and Alateens in this room today. There would be a lot more dead alcoholics if it wasn't for Al-Anon. They'd be shot. And personally in my life, Al-Anons have been all over in it, and they've helped me so much. They've taught me great things. And the Alateens, at our house several years back, we had Alateens all over the place. I'd work at the fire department, and I'd come home, and there's Alateens stretched all over the floors. They had videos laying everywhere, and we don't have any kids. We didn't. And but boy, we had a lot of Alateens. Our house was full of them, and it was fantastic. And those young people stayed the course, and a lot of them they still get a hold of us when they come back. When they get a hold of me, and when they come back from being in the service, and being overseas and all over the place, then they call and they make contact and they come around, and it's just been fantastic. And if you don't have Alateen going in your community, I highly recommend it. It can salvage a lot of those poor children that got severely disturbed by us. I just last night I had slammed a bunch of ice cream just before going to bed, and drank a bunch of coffee, laid up there staring at the ceiling, planning a speech, turned it over to God about as often as I turned over in bed, and finally got it let go of, and got to sleep about 3 this morning. And but I tell you, for me, this being able to come before people, actually stand up before people, and tell the story of my life, and it's, for me, it's right out of the book. It's what we were like, what happened, and what we are like now. And since I'm not going to talk about you, I'm going to change that part to I. And I'll tell you, for me to be able to do that up here is just phenomenal, because I couldn't let anybody know anything about me. And what this program has done for me is allowed me to be able to stand up in front of people and tell you the worst things that have gone on in my life. And that's just unbelievable to me. It's given me a freedom that's beyond belief. And what's more amazing is that people aren't usually running for the door. And I say usually. On the way up, we were riding along, my sponsor and I. Where are you at? I haven't spotted you. Oh, he's over here, sitting way in the back. All right. I just want to know where he was so I wouldn't look over there while I'm talking. As we were driving up here, we had XM radio. Of course, we were listening to rap, and we were drifting along, and I asked him. I said, "Well, I wonder how many really good speakers there are in AA." And he said, "Probably one less than you think." And he's so kind, like the ladies in AA when I first showed up, and I was bathing then, and I was smelling better, and they said, "Why don't you do something about your mouth?" And I have found it unnecessary to speak that language since then. They helped me a lot. I love my sponsor, but I've loved all my sponsors. I haven't had the privilege of keeping the same one all the way through, but I have the privilege of having the one that I have now. Some of them, I'd like to speak to that real quick before I start into my story, is this sponsorship thing. If you think you can pick the best sponsor in the world, how did you end up here? I have a busted picker. This is a God deal. And when I came waltzing right out of that jitter joint, and I walked into AA, and I picked a sponsor, and it was a shorter guy wearing a flat top hat, and I asked him, and because I was guided to do it, and God took care of the rest. And that person got me started into this program, and got me started in the steps, got me in the steps according to the big book, and then right into service immediately. And it was washing ashtrays, I smoked, and doing lots of, doing the coffee, setting up, tearing down, and every time there was something else to do, I got volunteered. I was so busy trying to save my hind end, I wasn't watching him. I was doing what he said, and we were going different places, and I was doing that. And unbeknownst to me, this man was not living the program. He was actually taking a little extra out of the hat, I guess a percentage. Maybe you're supposed to do that when you're first in, but we had another orientation deal for the court system, and he was passing the hat, and they weren't even supposed to pass it, and he was making all of that. He was chipping around, he was hauling out guns on people, he was doing lots of stuff, and at 17 and a half years of sobriety, he stuck a gun in his chest and pulled the trigger. And I was devastated. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to find another sponsor, and of course I started looking for the perfect sponsor, because now I had a little bit of time, and you're a lot better judge now, right? And what happened was a guy got put right in my life, and it was like a miracle, and he was perfect. He was into service, he was married, had a good marriage, he had a good program. We did service, we did steps and everything, and then he got a job in Seattle and had to move, and we didn't even get a year together. And so then I was looking around for some, and had some years by then, and I was looking for this sponsor, and it was going on, and I was sponsoring quite a few people by that time. Well, by me, when I say quite a few, we're talking 6, 7. I can't do the multiple numbers that some do, but my sponsees finally came up to me and they told me, "You will have a new sponsor by your birthday." And and evidently I didn't act quick enough, because about a month later they came up and told me who my sponsor was. And that worked. It worked for quite a while, and that speaks well for Alcoholics Anonymous too. They were taking care of me, and I had that sponsor for several years, and then he drifted off. He just drifted off. I couldn't catch up with him. We couldn't have lunch, dinners. We couldn't have get together and work the program. Look at the steps, and it just wasn't happening. And finally, he drifted off, and that's a terrible place to be. Bob talked a little bit about that. Yesterday, we get into AA and we get in here for a while, and we drift out in here to Never Never Land, and we think we're doing well, and we're going backwards. We're running backwards. And finally, the way I picked my sponsor that I have now, I happened to be at a deal to speak in Lake Okoboji, Iowa. And it was on Saturday morning, we were going to have a speaker panel, and it was on sponsorship. And I didn't have one. I had been kind of using this sponsor, but I hadn't asked him, which is part of the humbling process, I believe. And so I got up about 6 in the morning and called him, and I said, "Hi, how you doing? I'm Lake Okoboji, and would you be my sponsor?" And so then about 3 or 4 hours later, I got to get up on that panel and say, "I sponsor people, and I have a sponsor." And but then I had to tell him, and I've had him for like 4 hours. I'll tell this to the new people. I'd absolutely get a sponsor. It's like getting dropped in the middle of the Amazon and thinking you're going to walk out of there and stay alive. Unless you have a guide to find that trail for you, you're not going to make it. It's just not going to happen. And the only reason that guide knows how to do it is because somebody else showed that guide how to get down that trail. And that's what this is. This was a jungle for me. I could read the words, but I couldn't understand. I could not apply it. I needed somebody else who had walked that path to show me how to do it. And I try not to tell anybody I sponsor how to do it. Try to show them, do it with them. And if you're new in the program, do not delay. Say, "Well, I'm going to get to that," or whatever. You know how alcoholics do that. We'll get to it many years later. You don't have to suffer like that. We have guides around here that are willing and able to help you. And like I just told you, the first one helped me immensely. He helped many people sober up. And he ended up killing himself because he wasn't living the program. But God took care of me. If your intentions are right and you got the right place, and I recommend if you see people with the lights on in here and they're at a group that you're going to regularly, ask them about who would be a sponsor for you. It's okay to ask for help. I didn't know that for a long time. I was raised in Montana. In fact, I was born on March 28th, 1947. Dorothy Halverson gave birth to a 9-pound, 13.5-ounce dry drunk. And I came sliding out of the chute, and that old doctor grabbed me by the ankles, hung me upside down, and whacked me on the butt. And I got restless, irritable, and discontent immediately. But that was solved real soon with a few quick drinks. And that established my pattern for life. And I don't even know when some of this stuff happened to me. I was always I just didn't fit in my family. I know some of you understand that. I didn't fit. I was raised in an extremely good family. My mother was Catholic. My dad had become Catholic. He was a Lutheran before. There was no alcoholism in our house. My dad would get drunk once in a while at Christmas time or something. He got silly and he was funny, but he always showed up and he did this stuff and he was kind and loving. Everybody liked my dad. Everybody. I didn't meet anybody that didn't like him. My mother was so loving and kind. I have 3 older sisters, and none of them are alcoholic. And so I wasn't raised in that environment. You do not need training for this. I picked it up rather well. And because I hear a lot of people come out of terrible homes and they did terrible things, I came out of a good home, did terrible things. And it seemed like I just picked it up. It was like a duck to water. And I know that, I had a troubled childhood. I was on my 2nd probation by the 3rd grade. And that was for setting off dynamite. And it was the same sheriff as the probation just before it, for tearing up a dairy farm and rodeoing the calves on the 4th of July and about killing them. And it just didn't improve from there. I did well in school. School was very easy for me. I could get grades however I wanted them. I just didn't think it was necessary most of the time. I've heard other people say that. And we have a lot of potential, we alcoholics. I heard that a lot. I hated that word. But I was that way, and in school in that little town, I was okay, and I did well with the grades as much as I wanted to. And I picked up this thing called lying. It was just second nature. I'd open my mouth up and stuff would come out, and I was making up all kinds of stuff because I had a big inferiority complex. I was never satisfied with who I was. I always wanted to be somewhere else, doing something else as somebody else, and so I would lie, and I would steal money out of my mother's purse to buy them stuff so they would think I was cool, and I stole money out of my mother's purse to buy her presents, and she had a really great silver dollar collection, and those would be worth some money now, but I stole them all. I got rid of them all for her. And I always thought I was really pulling the wool over her eyes until I sobered up, and she said, "Bob, you're not near as good a liar as you think you are." But that's the way I was right out of the chute. And I picked up rage. That happened very early. It happened way before I can really start remembering. Because I know when I was about 3, I clocked my sister with a big old pair of pliers, and she got cut. And I would go into fits of rage when I didn't get my way, and I would tear things up and just go ballistic. And that stayed with me until I got to AA. And I didn't start drinking. I didn't require that stuff, evidently, until later on. And then God saw fit to give me some relief. And there's a fellow in AA, his name's Johnny H., and I was listening to him right after I was in AA for a while, just a little while, and he said that alcohol was the only thing that kept him from going completely insane until he found AA. Boy, I identified with that. When I was 13, I was this short little fat kid, and every now and then that guy still exists inside me. I got to keep an eye on him. But, I was 13 years old, and I was helping my brother-in-law and another guy dig a well, and I had drinks of booze before that, beer, some other stuff, but I never could have enough. My parents were just too big, and I couldn't have what I wanted. Well, that day they turned us loose, and I was helping them dig that well, and they just turned the beer loose. It was just lay in there, and you could have what you wanted. And so I was drinking away and helping. And all of a sudden, somewhere along the line, I don't know how many, but whatever, but something happened. It was magic, and you've heard it from several speakers up here. All of a sudden, I fit. Here I was, this little short kid, fat kid. I had a crew cut. I looked kind of like a basketball with whiskers on my head. And boy, all of a sudden, I drank this booze, and all of a sudden, I was just as big as my brother-in-law and the other guy. I fit. I was one of. It wasn't like I was better then, and it wasn't like I was less than. All of a sudden, I was right there, dead in the middle of the road. And it was just like, oh, man. It's like sizing fluid. It makes your skin fit. And I mean, it was the most miraculous thing that ever happened to me. I thought, this is what I've been needing. And I didn't know it at that time. And I devoted my life to that. I wanted more of that. And I drank right there and it felt good. And B.B. King has a song out called More. Some of you may have heard it. I think that was dedicated to me. I want more. And when I get to drinking, I want more of everything. But all kinds of women and money and booze, but booze especially. And I started drinking, and I drank like a pig that day, the same way I was drinking when I finished up. But I started drinking, I got drunk, I fell down the well on top of my brother-in-law. They haul me home, I'm a big mud ball. They checked me in with my mom, and I got a bunch of this. I don't remember the words, I remember the action. And then they threw me in my room to get me out of the way of everybody, and I laid in there, and I flopped down on the bed on my back, and then the bed took off. And it's spinning like crazy. I threw a leg out to try to keep my balance, and it didn't work. I ended up just flying over out of the bed. And I jumped up, and then another phenomenon happening. It's called projectile vomiting. I hit every wall in the room. It's all over the bed, and I remember I had a little sailor hat I won at the fair. I filled that. And bless my parents, bless them, they didn't come in and clean it up. They let me lay in it. And the next morning, however, I awakened to new orders. And I started cleaning up that room, and I was sick. Boy, I was sick. And I started cleaning that room and getting that mess done. And I took some more lectures, I know. But it was barely noon or shortly after lunch, and the thing happened. I thought, boy, that was great. I need more of this. I need this. Because it was so fantastic. It had changed my life so dramatically. Right there at the age of 13, it was just unbelievable. And I devoted my life to it. I've had a lot of careers. Some you don't like to tell a lot of other folks other than in these rooms. But I've had a lot of careers. I've had a lot of jobs, let's say. I didn't have any careers. I worked to make money to drink. And I picked the jobs that would fit the bill best. I was 15 when I became aware of my first blackout. And I know I probably had several before. You don't remember them. So this is the first one I became aware of because I was underwater with my motorcycle. And I jumped up, and it was laying there still running. It was only in about 3 feet of water. I just ran out there and plop, evidently. And I'm standing there pulling my motorcycle up, and I'm in Central Park in Billings, Montana. And I have no idea how I got there. And so I just get on my motorcycle, I ride home, and I go into the house, and I tell my mom, boy, it's really raining outside. I didn't know if it was raining or not. But then I went to my room, and I went to bed, which was a dead giveaway because it was still daylight. But a couple days later, I got with these buddies of mine, and I said, what happened to me? What was that? I said, I woke up, I came around, and I was underwater. And they said, don't worry about it. It happens all the time, when you're drinking. This is where, you newcomers, you really want to be careful where you get your information. Be sure who you're asking these questions to have the real facts and the answers, because these guys, it was normal for them. I had already, at that age, picked who I was going to be with. And I had picked them out much earlier. We were doing all kinds of stuff before that. And right there, when I asked them that, and they said that was normal, and they all agreed, that was the way it was. And that's the way it is. In fact, that's kind of what I was shooting for a lot, was that, oblivion. I didn't care if it was a blackout or pass out, just as long as I wasn't there. That was 15. At the age of 18, I went to Denver and worked a summer, and I came back, and I was, at 16, I got to go about this. Had my first contact with AA. 16 years old. And this buddy and I ran around, and we ended up in their house over at 508 Cook, and there's an AA building right next door, 510 Cook. And I used to throw up in that lot before they built that building. But at 508 Cook, there was these two guys, Bill and Jack, twin brothers, and they got Gary and I in there, and they started talking about AA and God. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you old farts, will you shut up? I mean, as old as you are, you can't possibly have fun. Why would you drink? And they were probably, Amber aged a few of us the other day. These guys were probably pushing 40, 35, something like that. Really old guys. And we escaped that house, and I never gave Alcoholics Anonymous another thought. The only other thought I had before I ever got here was that if you went around there, your insurance rates would go up on your vehicles. They've proven to me that that's the opposite. They go down. But I got out of there, and just 2 years later, when I was 18, I was in Billings, and the one guy, Bill, his son and I were downtown chasing girls around. We were driving a big old Pontiac Chieftain. Older folks know what those are. And then we were driving this big boat around and chasing women downtown, and I cut down an alley to cut these gals off that I thought were coming around the block. And boy, I went shooting up that alley, and then all of a sudden I ran out of alley, and because I was impaired a little bit. I thought it was just bad driving. I went shooting out into the street with this big old Pontiac, and here was a little Hillman coming along, very small vehicle. And I just took that Hillman right over to the curb. I hit it up high. I was off the ground. I hit that, and I took it right into the curb. And boy, then the next thing I know, there's lights and sirens, and there's ambulances, and my buddy's bleeding out of the head, and I too, you know, from hitting the side windows. And they hauled us off to the police station. We're sitting up there in that police station for about an hour. And finally, the officers came in, and they said, you know, the lady that was in that car is in surgery. She's already had her spleen removed, and she's in critical condition. We don't know if she's going to make it. And I was devastated. I had no idea what to do, but it really wasn't still settling in. And the husband, he just had some stitches and stuff like my buddy and I were going to get. But then about another hour later, they came in, and they said that the baby that this lady was carrying on her lap was thrown out of the car, and its head hit the curb, and it was killed. And this was just a baby in blankets. And if any of you are about 41 years old right now or less, that's about how old that human being would be right now had it not been for me and this illness. That little baby was dead, and my first reaction was I was pissed at God. I could not believe that God could be so unjust, that me, a human slug, a zero, I didn't belong on this earth. I already knew that I was a waste of space. I was just no good. I knew that, and here I was alive, and this baby who'd never had a shot at the world was dead. I just couldn't understand that. And finally, they got my parents down there, and now the parents here, I've learned to understand this sense. When you're a parent and you get a call in the middle of the night, and they say, would you please come down here? And they probably didn't tell them, and then when they got there, they had to tell them that I had killed this baby driving drunk. And I can't even imagine what that would do to a parent. The devastation, the heartache that it had to cause them. Man, it's just unbelievable. Boy, Angie, you think you primed me up good? I'm going to give you a run for those tears. But, boy, and I tell you what, they had me at home for just a little bit, and then the sheriff came and they arrested me and they hauled me down and they threw me in the jail. And I was so thrilled to get in that jail. I'll tell you what, it was like sanctuary for me. I did not deserve to be among regular human beings. I needed to be out of the way. I needed to be in that jail. And it was just so great to be in there with nobody could talk to me or anything else. And I was in there for several days, and my parents weren't wealthy enough to bail me out. Finally, some people out of the town of Colstrip that had farmed down there, they had a farm right by Billings End. They put their farm up on property bond to get me out of jail. Here a few years ago, the man's dead now, but here a few years ago, I went to Florence, and I thanked her for doing that. And I thought they did it for my parents. And she said, no, Ed wanted you out of there. He had that kind of faith in me then, you know, and it's just unbelievable that people do these things. My parents, you know, once they got me out of that jail, I was at home for about 3 months in just total remorse. I had no idea what to do. And then my parents, bless their hearts, they just knew how to do things. They took me to that funeral of that baby. We went over to St. Patrick's Church. We sat in the back, the three of us, and up in the front there's this little coffin. And there's all these people sitting up there, and they kept turning around and looking back, several of them. And my view of it at that time was they all hated me, and they wished I was dead and not that baby dead. And I'll guarantee you, I was with them. I wanted the same thing. But you know, after being in Alcoholics Anonymous for several years, I understand that there were people sitting there up front looking back and thinking, what is going to happen to that poor young man now? People have that kind of compassion. You people in this program have given it to me. Whenever something terrible happens, I say a prayer for both sides every time, because I know what it's like to be on the other side. But those people, I know they felt that. And that was at age 18. And I was pending trial. They charged me, and I was pending trial for a whole year. And I had a lawyer called Timer Moses. That's the kind of people you need with names like that. And for a whole year, I stayed around home a lot, and then finally my mother kept dragging me to church, and I should have one ear very long over here from being drugged to church. And she got me to church a lot of times. And then finally one day I just thought, I got to do something. And I made my deal with God. I was 18. I said, God, I wasted a life, a totally innocent life I wasted. I need to go out and do something from here and make something out of my life. And I'll do that and dedicate it to this child. It's not about me. And I mean, that was a great feeling. It was a great incentive. And I really meant it, that I was going to go out and make something of myself to make up for that baby who was gone. And I hired on to a ranch down by Hysham, Montana, and I moved in on Sunday, and I was drunk on Monday. And understand, I was in the bar since I was 15. I walk up and order right off the counter. And at age 18, here I was back in the bars, and I started drinking with a vengeance. Well, I mean a vengeance. And you do not drink away dead babies. And I know a lot of you have stuff in your past that you don't drink it away. It's like getting drunk with a toothache. You're just drunk with a toothache. It's still there. And I did that for the rest of that year. And finally, the court system allowed me to be drafted in 1966. And it wasn't because they were being real kind. It was because of all the people who were being killed in Vietnam. We were donating bodies by the gobs back then. And I'll tell you what, the reason that I didn't end up in the penitentiary rests squarely on the shoulders of all the people who died in Vietnam. They allowed me to be drafted into the Army. They dropped the charges, exonerated the bond, and they wouldn't let me join. They made sure the Army drafted me and had hold of me before they let go. And, excuse me, there was I went in and I thought, okay, we'll go in here. And I went in and I joined up, and I was only there one day, and I signed up for electronics courses. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just figured I'm going to Nam, but might as well pick up an education in case you do survive. And so I went into electronics, and I got into Nike Hercules missiles in Fort Worth, Texas, and Fort Bliss, Texas, down at El Paso. And I ended up in a training where they don't even have it in Vietnam. God looking after me, I know it had to be. While I was in El Paso, I probably neglected to say that I had a very active sexual life in high school, extremely active. And when I got to El Paso, Juarez is right across the river. It cost 23 cents round trip from the barracks. You had a penny one way, 2 pennies the other way, and 10 cents both ways on the bus. And I went over to Juarez, and boy, I tell you what, I found somebody over there, and for the first time in my whole life, I experienced what it was like to have sex with a partner there. It was just, this was something. You can get feedback, bad or good. There was somebody there, and it changed everything. I was only making about $80 a month then. You had to buy your cigarettes and everything else. And whatever else I had left, I used for my education, my sex education. I was hiring tutors for about $2 a lesson, and needless to say, when I got to AA, I had a rather warped sexual inventory. I survived that down there, and they sent me to Germany instead of Vietnam and instead of Korea. I got sent to Germany, and boy, I got over to Germany, and there's something, again, magic about you go across this big pond, and all of a sudden you're insulated from your family. They no longer can read about you in the paper or see you on television anymore, and you start doing things. A lot of people were nuts over there. I took it to an extreme. I just went completely crazy. All the time I was in high school, I always tried to talk my way out of fights. I didn't like to fight. Evidently I didn't like bleeding that much or something. But by then I get to Germany, and I had all this stuff inside me, and it started boiling out all over everybody, and I became an extremely, extremely violent alcoholic. I got in lots of fights. The first one over there, I was trying to kill the guy. I tried to bite his fingers off. I was doing anything I could to win that fight. I didn't care. And I was just raging. From the time I hit Germany in 1966 or 1967 until I got into AA, every fight I got in, I got drug out of it. Either the other person was unconscious and I was still beating them, or they were doing the same thing to me. And I was raised Catholic, and I knew what confession was. I used to go there and lie in the confessional. They used to tell big lies so I could slide the stuff I really did, get it by the priest. And I was over there, and I found another way of getting absolution. And it was getting a really terrible fight, and it didn't matter whether you won or lost as long as you're dealing out some punishment and taking a lot of it yourself. and I took a lot. I got beat bad a lot of times, but every time I got beat, when the stitches start coming out and the scabs start falling off, you kind of feel a little forgiven for what you've done. And it's a warped way of looking at it, but I know a lot of people who have done the same thing, and I used that. I got over there, and you can feel morals die, by the way. Your morals can just keep sliding away, and you feel them go down the drain. I was around there for a while chasing women, and then I ran into this good-looking redhead. Oh, boy. We were at a disco downtown, and I ran into her, and I thought, this is it. This is what will fix me up. And so I started chasing her around, and the other gal I'd been with for a while, she didn't take kindly to that, and so they got in a big fight downstairs, and the new one hauled out a pistol, and bam, the other one went down like a shot, and I thought, oh, man. And I saw something sticking out, and I thought it was a bullet pucker or something, and I pulled it up, and it was her boob got jerked out from under her bra is what it was. And I was so relieved not to see blood. It was unbelievable, but we got her, the gal, the redhead, we got out of there. And we hooked up, and we started living off post in a hotel. And I found out that she was a hooker. And we just started living together. And I want to say right up front here, I have nothing bad to say about hookers, nothing whatsoever. Prostitutes, I met some fantastic women, some fantastic people that were driven to that. They had no choice, or they've made their own choices, but they were terrific people. A lot of them really helped me out at times. One helped me out in billing. She was the madam, and helped me out. We used to exchange Christmas presents. But at this time, I ended up living with this gal, and when I found out she was a hooker, okay, we can do this. And because I was running a little short of cash anyway, my paycheck wasn't that good. So that movie, Leaving Las Vegas, some of you may have seen it. It's rather graphic, but that's pretty much my life. I'd be sitting in the hotel waiting for her to come back with the cash so we could drink. And I'd be jealous. Sometimes I'd beat the other guys up. Sometimes I had to go muscle them a little bit because of what they did or wouldn't do with the money. And that was a profession that I didn't ever say out loud until my mother was dead, really. But it's called pimp. And it doesn't require any special training either. We hung around together a lot, and we did a lot of tough things. I felt that moral go down the drain. I was raised different. I was a nice little kind. I was an altar boy. I'm just kind of a fallen altar boy is all I am, really. But after we were there a while, one night we were outside. We were in Eberstadt, Germany, and we were outside the TS Hanseatic, and I remember that just as clear as I do anything that happened this morning. And we were standing there in this little doorway, and I was backed into the doorway, and she's right in my face, and she was a fair-sized gal. And boy, she is getting on my case. And I told her, back off. I don't need this. And she wouldn't shut up. And the most amazing thing happened. I reached out and I whacked her right upside the head. I mean, I really popped her. And I'd been in a lot of scraps, I was toughened in, and I was mean, and I was nasty. I was insane. And I whacked her one. And I was in such shock. I thought, man, I had 3 older sisters and a mom. I was taught to respect women. You don't do this stuff. I went to Denver and ran a guy off that broke in on my sister and roughing her around. I had morals. That one died right there. I felt it go just right there. The other most amazing thing was that she didn't go down. She was, whoa. I was to learn later, she was very tough. And what happened, we hung around together quite a while, and finally one day she says, we were going to go on a vacation with her parents down to Spain. I was just getting towards the end of my tour in Germany, and she says, I want you to go up and meet my parents, she says, and it'd probably work a lot better if we were engaged. I said, sounds good to me, So we got engaged. This is not the way to pick a life mate and to start a relationship, a good relationship, let's say. We went to her town, and we met those people, and then we ended up going to Spain together. And I have to say that I got to see some of Spain and some of France on the way down. We went down below Barcelona, down to Castellón de la Plana, and we're on the Mediterranean. It was just great. And for 7 days, I got to see all of that stuff. I wasn't drunk. I was taking pictures. I was seeing the country, and it was great because you can't drink alcohol when you have penicillin in you. And she had given me kind of an engagement gift called clap. And part of the job. I still probably could file suit over there and get some industrial accident maybe, I don't know. And you know what was so sad about that is I just thought, well, that's just part of the deal. Okay, we take the penicillin, we move on. Made sure she got some penicillin, and we were good. You just write stuff like that off. You just accept it. That's life. And we got back from there. I might add, on day 8, I was face down in front of the beer deal. I mean, I was out. I had to catch up. We went back up to Germany, and we were there for a few more months, and then I rotated back to the United States, and I came back in '69 to the United States, and I was back here for just about 3 months. I did some hunting in Montana, and then we were corresponding because we were engaged, and she arranged, we had a bar waiting. So I went back to Germany. I flew over there. Hardly any money in my pocket. I flew over to Germany, and we owned a bar. This also not a good idea. Hard to turn a profit when it's all going down the urinal. And I ended up over there, and we got this bar, and I got there in the start of December, and towards the end of December on New Year's Eve, we had a big party, and what they do in Germany, they're little corner things, and everybody in the neighborhood comes in, and then they lock the door, and you have a big party. And I was in there, and my future brother-in-law was trying to pick a fight with somebody, and in my best German, I asked him to please go outside and not have the fight in there. And I mean, I was trying to be that polite. And the future father-in-law over here smacked me right in the face. And my first reaction is, after all that fighting, I went for him. But my fiance grabbed me, hauled me back, talked me out of it. Well, this happened one more time. And I thought, okay, third time, you're mine. He had a really big Roman nose. And I happen to know what it's like when your nose gets broke. You can't see, you're teared up, blood everywhere. And that was my target. And not that I was setting up the next round, but I watched for him, and when he took a swing, I sidestepped it, and I took his nose and just put it over on the other side of his face. I followed him right in, and we took out a whole corner room we had built. The walls went down, the doors. We were into the chairs, and I total rage, I lost track of everything. Sometime later, I'm standing in the door to this bar, and everybody's outside. Many of them are stacked up. I mean, they're out. The bar looked like a bomb went off. Everything's broken. I have no shirt left. I'm just about down to my underwear. I'm bleeding everywhere. I really wish I could have seen it. It must have been a spectacular brawl. I don't know if I had help getting them all out there, but they were there. The father-in-law couldn't work for 3 months. He had a broken nose, broken ribs, wrist, and several other things. Many people were injured. And over there, you can't own property when you're not a German. And the mother-in-law kicked us out of there. And so the next day, we wake up to no finances at all. And for 3 days, we didn't have anything to eat or anything. We started addressing envelopes finally to make some money. And I started working in an electronics company there, a subdivision of Philips, because I was a radar and computer technician. And we started trying to put it together again. And they finally talked me into coming back to that bar, which I swore I never would, because I was never going to let anybody catch me off guard with no money. How dare they? And so I lived there for 2 full years, working at that electronics company, and then started running the bar again. And we were having such trouble. We got married, and I started beating her more often. And I might say she got in her licks too, because when you drink like I do, you pass out, and you're very vulnerable. One night in particular, we came home, and she wanted me to hold her head while she was puking, and I refused. And I went in and I flopped down on the bed face down, and I'm just laying there, and boy, all of a sudden the stars just flew in my eyes. I thought I got punched in the nose again. What it was, she came in there with a hammer and was going to kill me. She was going to hit me in the head, but then she thought, I might go to jail. So she hit me in the ankle. You know that little knob that sticks out on your ankle? My right ankle, it was gone. And had I been able to get up and chase her out to the kitchen where she ran, I'd have probably killed her. But it took me a while to get moving again, and I went out there and I took the hammer away, threw it out the window, which was closed, which I had to fix. And it was kind of our life. One night she was on me. She was trying to hit me with toasters and several other kitchen appliances, and I grabbed my blanket and my pillow, and I went in the bathroom, and I locked the door, and I got in that old clawfoot tub and pillow behind me, and I pulled the blanket over me, and I was just going to sleep in there and keep her off. I'd locked the door. The door exploded. She's a tough gal, I'm telling you. In came the door jamb, wood flying all over, and she's on top of me like a bad habit. Bam! Try getting out of a bathtub when somebody's on top of you. You can't get purchase. It's no way to get out. Honest to God, that was the first time I thought I was really going to die. I thought she was doing me in. I wasn't sure what was in her hands, knives, whatever, boy, I was scrambling trying to get out of there, and I finally got my arm hooked on something and got her pushed off me and got up out of there, and then we kind of kissed, made up, and went to bed. And I admired her tenacity to hang in there. And then I came back to the States after that. After a while, it just wasn't working, and I thought maybe an intercontinental change might help this marriage. And so I came back to the States, and I got a couple of different jobs right away, and then I hired on to the Billings Fire Department in 1972, January 1st. And in February, I sent for her, and she came over. And she arrived at the airport, and I was so thrilled to see her up there. February, she shows up, and man, she had this nice jacket on that I had sent her, and boy, we kissed and hugged, and we were getting ready to leave, and she said, well, wait, we've got to get Fifi off the airplane. Fifi, a poodle. This is 72 now. It cost me $90 to get that poodle off the plane. If you're familiar with the story of Jim the car salesman in the Big Book, he says, I had a little discussion with the boss, but no big deal. Well, that was our discussion. We had a discussion over that poodle, but no big deal. I had other things on my mind. We get home, marital bliss. I used to say for about 3 hours, but that was a stone out lie. It was, she'd been away a long time. It was over real quick. And I'll tell you what, our hands-on relationship just kicked right back in, and it was bad. I remember my dad coming over to the house sometimes and dragging me out of bed in the morning, asking me what the hell I thought I was doing. He drugged me out into the living room, and there she sat with an eye swelled shut and big lip and bleeding and all beat to hell, and it was me. Didn't remember it, but I knew it was me. And my dad sitting there seeing this stuff just tore me up, because this man I loved. I loved my parents. I loved them all. And they were having to witness this stuff. They had to see their son doing this to his wife. And there was times he'd come down to the bars and try to get me out, and he'd say, Bob, come on, we got to get you out of here. And I, honest to God, there was times I wanted to say, Dad, geez, thanks, get me out of here. I need help. But I'd say, get the hell out of my life and leave me alone. It would just come right out of my mouth. I'd run him off. Her and I we had such a violent relationship, and she started chipping around on me again. Well, I shouldn't say again. It might have been going on all the time. I was rather blind to it. There's people in here who might identify with just blinding yourself to the facts and pretending that it's okay because you don't want to rock the boat. Well, that was kind of me until it finally just came to a head one day on New Year's Day, and I really had the facts then, and so I just walked out of the house and got with another friend of mine, and we just got really drunk, and we ended up in Denver. Seemed like a good thought, and we went down there and got drunk, and then we came home, and I came in the house, and she had rearranged the house a bit. We had a lot of candle holders and all this stuff, and there was holes in the walls all over. High, low, there. She'd thrown everything. If there was stuff broken, it was just like a disaster. It looked like that bar did in Germany, and she'd done it herself. And so I started looking for my pistol, and I couldn't find it. And I needed a shower because I'd been on the run for about 3-4 days. So I took a shower. I blocked the doors on both sides with chairs and other stuff, and then I left the shower curtain open, and I was taking a shower, keeping an eye on every place because I just expected her to come through the door with that gun any second. And we talked things over, and she went back to Germany for a stay, and finally I sent her a letter she could stay there or come back. It didn't matter to me. And it was just done. And we ended up getting divorced. And for about a year, I worked really hard to pay off my debts. And after about a year, I started seeing daylight, so I started drinking really hard again. And she, in the meantime, got married again. So then she started chipping on that guy with me. Not that we had a sick relationship. Then she divorced that guy and married another guy, and she chipping on him with me. And there was another guy in there. I don't know if she married him or not, but she chipping on him with me too. And that's where the madam steps in. She told me one day, Bob, divorce is more than a piece of paper. Leave her alone. And it sunk in, and I left her alone after that. Before that, her second husband, they were hunting me down with a gun, and I just stumbled into the wrong bar and stayed there, and it was kind of a hidden bar. They didn't find me that night. They wanted to kill me. Anyway, for the next 10 years, and believe it or not, I never chippied on her. I never looked at another woman. I never even thought of it. I'm just loyal as a dog as far as that goes. Everything else is really wrong, but there it was all right. And so we get divorced, and then for about the next 10 years, I was unattached, and I was the slut. I woke up in places with people that I shouldn't have been with friends' wives, and I mean, people. No, I woke up in states. My blackouts may go 5 days. I've had some that were that way, and you end up in the wrong state, and it's really scary when you start asking people about where you're at, and you say, no, I mean, what state? They get a little spooky, and I had a lot of things. I woke up in a lot of bad places. I did a lot of bad things. I beat a lot of people. I got beat a lot. I've been shot, stabbed, run over with cars, beat half to death, and lots of times. And it was that was just my way of life. After about 10 years of this, I'd run up against the wall again, and the law was after me, and I just said, that's it. I didn't know what to do. And on March 28th, my birthday, some friends took me out to lunch at Dos Machos, a Mexican place to eat. And I had one of those afterburner thirsts. Some of you may know that. It's like it's been, I think I started in 76, and this one lasted till 82. And I was really burnt up. And I just got to that place, and I had a margarita, of all things. I wanted something sour, salty, cold. And that was so good, I had another one. And that was it. Last thing I ever had to drink in my life. March 28th, 1982. It wasn't that I was making a grand decision to go to AA, but I just was up against the wall. I'd hit it. And I went home after they left, and I went there, and I sat for about 5 days trying to do my inventory. Kind of like a newcomer. Busted tool. Not possible. I needed help. I sat there trying to figure it out, and my friend that owned the house came over, and he drank a 12-pack of beer, Rainier beer, and explained to me my problem with alcohol. This guy is one of my best friends. He is a heavy drinker. He could quit in the middle of a drunk and go home. He did his stuff. He did not have the problem that I have. He could do that. He could control his drinking. And he was okay with who he was inside. He didn't have that problem. But he stayed loyal to me, and he helped me that night. I was living in his house. He happened to be living with another lady somewhere else. And the other guy that I ended up with in Denver with, he was living in the house with me. And he had 6 months before gotten in a big fight with his wife, who was a nurse, and he went down there with a load of booze on and a few extra things, and he started reading her off at the hospital, and she said to the doctors, he's nuts, put him away, and they threw him in the rubber room. And then he went to court, and they sent him to a treatment center, and we were going to hire a lawyer to defend him because they could do that to him, they could do it to us. And upshot was, I went to bed that night after my friend talked to me, and I went downstairs. And when I went into that basement, it was just like it says in the big book. I came to know a loneliness such as few people do. I mean, it was a dark, dismal, lonely, cold. I was so lost. And I wanted to pray, and I couldn't remember how. At 18, I quit praying to God. I never asked God for anything. God was a bad guy. I mean, when guys were stabbing me, I did not ask God for help. I had enough trouble with the guy in front of me. I didn't need God there. Because if God was not the helpful soul, he was there with a blowtorch going to fry me for my stuff. That night I wanted to pray, and I didn't know how. I went to bed, and I got up the next morning, was making coffee, and the most amazing thing happened. I looked over at the wall, and there was a phone there, and John Wayne got up and walked right over there and called for help. I just didn't believe in asking for help. You don't show weakness, you don't show nothing. I went over there and dialed Mike's number, the guy who had got pitched in the rubber room. I'd watched him. He came to you people. And all of a sudden, he wasn't drinking anymore. And he was getting back with his ex-wife, who I helped him hate for several years. And he's not hanging out in the bars. He's not hanging out in these places. And the biggest part of all of that, the most important, very most important part, he was smiling. He was not drinking and smiling. I quit a few times because I almost killed a guy once, and I found out about it later, and I quit for 3 months. And I mean, everybody was offering to buy my booze by the time that 3 months was up. I'm not a gentle soul when I don't have booze without this program. I was very nasty. I called for help, and I ended up they took me down, and this jolly, chubby guy comes to the door. They said, stay right where you're at. They didn't even ask who it was. And they send this guy up, and he knocks on the door, and he comes in. He says, oh, man, I'm so glad to meet you. You've got hundreds of friends you haven't even met yet. And I said, pal, I need help. I don't need friends. And so he hauls me down to the jitter joint there in Billings, and we sign up for a 28-day tour there. And they gave me a day off before I checked in because I had to go home and do some creative financing. You know, it's when you get it all in the air and then run away and try to get back before it hits the ground. And when I was in the jitter joint, I had to have the police come up and take a statement from me because they were still looking for me. And I thought, this is going to be tough to do an inventory with those boys looking after you. And I went in there, and the most amazing thing happened. I checked into treatment, and I know it's not for everybody, but that's what happened to me. I didn't ask for treatment. I asked for help, and that's where they put me. And my old friend Perry, he used to say that treatment is discovery, AA is recovery. This is where it takes place. I went up there, and I made some discoveries. First off, I checked in not because I was an alcoholic. I checked in because I was nuts. I was absolutely stark raving nuts, and I was not on the same plane as the rest of the people on earth. I had a small problem with alcohol. In my mind, when I start to drink, I can't seem to stop. And sometimes this goes for months. You know, like I said, my last one was 76 to 82, and there was very few breaks in there. And you know, I went up there, and I was sitting in one of those classes, and I wasn't really paying attention. I was listening to a few things, and this guy said something about alcoholism being an illness. And it was just like, boy, God was right on the spot, and my mind just clicked open, and I understood without the shadow of a doubt on that day that I was an alcoholic. I am powerless over alcohol. My life was obviously unmanageable. I wasn't having trouble with that part. But I mean, I understood it, and I mean, right to the marrow of my bones, I understood that, and that has not changed since. I mean, I know. I was more terrified in that moment than I've ever been in my life. I mean, people trying to kill me wasn't even close to that. That was scary, because I thought, holy cow, we're already in treatment. AA's next, and if this doesn't work, we're screwed. This is it. And I was scared to death. I was terrified of getting drunk again because I knew I can't stop. I can't do it. I don't have the strength to whip alcohol. And if there's anybody new in here and you think you got it, good luck to you. My hat's off to you. I'll tell you that. Because I don't have it. I just don't have the strength. It whipped me, beat me, and it ran me in the doors. I was a mess. And here's all these people just right there to help you. All the people I was trying to get away from, and there they are to help me. And we started doing the steps there. And I did a 4-step, much like Bob said. I made a list of all the horrible stuff I had done, and it was bad. When you're trying to look at your life, you look at one thing at a time. You can't see all of it. But I had written it down. And when I had it written down, I read it, and it was just positively revolting. I mean, from the start to the end. And I got this little, they gave me a Franciscan priest to listen to my 5th step. We got in there, and we started, and about 3 hours into it, he's starting to look at his watch. And I thought, he wants out of here. He's got a golf game or something. So I got between him and the door. Because I thought, you got to get rid of all this or you're going to get drunk. And he wasn't getting out. He was mine till I was done. And we still had to do the sex part. And I thought I was going to burn his habit up because, you know, he didn't even blink. It didn't even faze him when I started rattling off some of my horrible stuff in my sex inventory, plus all the other stuff. He would ask me a few questions, and we continued on. And when we walked out of that room, although it was not according to what the big book says, it was the best start I had going for me. And I recommend you get in here, you get a sponsor, and you do that to the best of your ability and get started. Do not delay. I walked out of that room, and I'd heard a lot of people say, when I came out of there, I was just floating. I was so free. And I came out of there, and I felt like somebody had whacked me right here with a 2x4. I was so stunned, I didn't know what it was. And I did just what they said. I went into my room, and I sat there, and I took them, and I didn't know what had happened. I had told the truth. I love that part in the big work says sometimes they'll tell the truth, you know. That was the first time I ever laid it out on the line, and my life was dependent upon it. I knew it, and I dumped it on him. And when I came out there, and I really got serious about this stuff. Big part was, and I have to tell you this, I couldn't grasp God. He was a bad guy. I didn't want anything to do with him. But thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous. All I needed to do was admit that there was a possibility there was a God. In the 12 and 12, life-saving thing for me, Bill wrote that you could actually do substitution and you could use the AA group. These people were staying sober. I couldn't. I used the AA group in AA for quite a while. I had a spiritual experience in treatment. I was going down and sitting with the Catholics in the little chapel, and they were all praying to God, and I thought I might rub off, so I was there every morning, boy. Catch some of that, and it wasn't working. But I'll tell you what, I had a day where something happened, and I got answers in my head, and they weren't my voices, and things started changing. But it took me a while in AA, using the AA group to get a hold of this thing. When it came to the third step, I turned my will in my life over to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I knew my dad lived like that. I knew that if there is such a thing as a higher power, he would want me to live according to these steps. And that's what I started doing. And still today, anything that doesn't measure up to those 12 steps in my life has to go. Thing is, you stick around and you get a few more things. You get traditions and you get concepts, and more stuff has to leave. But as you get better, a lot of stuff becomes unbearable in your life and you have to get rid of it. And I'd like to say that right after that, I became the pillar of AA, and I had no problems after that. But as you all know, that doesn't happen. I had a lot of reconstruction to do, and I got right into AA, and I had my sponsor. We moved out there, and we went right into service, and I quit doing the steps. I quit doing the steps for quite a while. And finally, I got so miserable I was about to die, and I asked my sponsor, I said, what can we, I'm just miserable. What can we do about this? And he says, well, how about those steps? And I said, okay, man. I said, I've already done 5. We're on 6 now. And he said, well, let's start at 1. And even though he wasn't doing the program himself, it was unbelievable how God took care of me. We started through those steps, and we started doing it the way this book is laid out. The problem that I had with that list that I made in the 4-step in treatment, I did not get down to the exact nature of my wrongs. I didn't understand this stuff. And when we do this inventory in here in this book, you start getting down to those things. And how much time have I got left? 10? Okay. I won't go into all the steps. I just want to tell you what's happened to my life. The most amazing things have happened to me. I mean, there's a possibility in January I might get to go to Folsom Prison. I am so excited I can't hardly stand it. Things have changed. When an alcoholic tells you that, things have changed. I love working with other alcoholics. I love going to psych centers and going to prisons and jails, and I love the hard meetings, the places where people are coming off the street. I love being there. I like it firsthand. I like it right there. I got to give my mother back 18 and a half years of sobriety before she died. My mother died the day before I was leaving for Minneapolis for the international conference. And boy, I was leaving that next day. My sisters had told me to go ahead and they'd call if something happened. She was dying of cancer. And I was at the meeting in Huntley when they called me. And I went back to the house, and I got to stay there and participate in the celebration of my mother's life. And that was an amazing event. My family leaned on me. They turned to me. And I got to handle my mother's finances. You know, my sisters trusted me with her finances. I was moving her money around into different places and taking care of paying her bills and doing all this stuff. I got to retire, you know, at the end of '98, so I got to spend a lot of time right at her house talking with her about death and all kinds of neat stuff. And it was just such a miracle, and for them to trust me with her finances after I was robbing her purse all the time. I mean, that's a big step. And they turned to me, and I was there, and I was available. My dad died in 1975, and I was just a pimple on the hind end of humanity. I mean, I was no value. I was a detriment to the family. And here I get to turn this around. And in a way, I feel this. I did get to make amends to my dad. He was dead when I sobered up. But I did get to make amends to him through this program, through my higher power, and through a sponsor. And I got to go out there and make amends to him while he was dead. I now have a better relationship with my dad than I ever did. I talk to him just like I do God a lot of time, and my mom. But my mother dying and got to be part of that, that was a huge thing. I called a bunch of people and told them I couldn't make it to the international conference. I told them, use my reservations and do all that stuff what you want to. And I called my buddy that I'd served with as delegate out in Nebraska. I called him and his wife, and I said, well, we're not going to be able to make it because my mom died. And they said, yeah, we heard. And I said, well, where are you guys at? And they said, well, we're in Wyoming. What are you doing in Wyoming? They said, well, we're on our way to your house. They came up and spent a week with me during my mother's funeral. And this is what he does. You get friends you just can't believe. 2003, I ended up getting divorced after 20 years of marriage, sober. You know, we got married not for the right reasons. It was just seemed like the thing to do. We got married. We were not brutal to each other. We just lived there in the same place. We were pretty good roommates, and we didn't have a lot of battles. She was in Al-Anon, I was in AA, but it just went this way. It kept going, and finally she'd had enough. And it wasn't that it was a bad environment, but it didn't have what it needed to be a good relationship. which I was to find out soon. and she left with another guy. And right at one of these roundups, as a matter of fact, it was on Sunday morning. He had flown into town and was staying in the Dude Rancher Lodge, and she moved into there and was staying with him, which I only found that out the day before we were signing the papers, that she was involved with another guy. They were picking out furniture and everything. Not that I was in La La Land, but we get there to this roundup, and she was leaving that day. We had settled the divorce thing, and it was just waiting for the judge to say it was done. And on Sunday morning, the 3rd of May, she left. Key thing, she was staying in that hotel with another guy. We are still married, and I didn't want to go down there and beat him up. That's amazing. I prayed for her. I prayed for him. I prayed for her for a solid year after that divorce. And after that year, I got to write her an email and send it to her and tell her that I had no animosity towards her, that I did not regret a day being married to her, that I hope she had a great life. Mine was getting better. Within 3 days after she left, I started feeling better. I was in a depression, didn't even know it. Depression doesn't come up and slap you on the side of the face. It's something that grows on you. And as the months went by, I started getting better and better. But the one thing before I close, I just want to share you, that baby that I killed back there in that car wreck, and I made that deal with God. If you've made some of those deals, be prepared, because it's coming. He's going to call that card in. And it was such a beautiful thing to me. I have got to work with kids. 8 years ago, I got to start a meeting in a high school, and it was an alternatives high school. A lot of places have them. Last place on the block for these kids. Are kicked out of every other school. They come out of horrible family situations. They've been in foster care. They've been raped, abused, beaten, and run off and abandoned, and then they get into foster care, and it happens all over again. We started an AA meeting there. This year, when I finished at the end of the school year, it was 8 full years, been there, showing up on Thursdays for those kids. They have taught me so much. I thought I had somewhat of a tough life. Oh, boy. I got in there with those kids, and I'll tell you what, you get around them and listen to what they've gone through. When they're telling about, yeah, my dad was passed out in the park, and all the kids are going by and peeing on him, and you listen to this stuff. And one day I was trying to figure out how to introduce God and talk to him. And, of course, God took care of it. I showed up at school that day, and I said, we're going to talk about God. Collective groan through the whole room. They thought, this is it. We knew he was going to start preaching any day. And I just said, no, don't groan. I says, what we're going to do is today, all we're going to do is we're going to go around the room, and you explain what you feel about God. Not what you think, not what you think I want to hear, just what you feel. We went around that room, and I'll tell you what, I almost started bawling out loud. It was so amazing. These guys, many of them thought Satan's got the upper hand, and when you look around the earth and what's going on with them, that's a viable deal. Some of them believe that God was just pissed at them and he didn't care and he was punishing them. Some of them believe there absolutely was no God. How could there be? Or he's busy with other people that he likes. I mean, I heard everything around that room, and it just tore me out. Fortunately, this gal that was helping me out that time, Courtney and I, we both shared what happened to us and how God came into our lives and how we found a higher power. And it doesn't have to be Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, or anything else. This program allows us that freedom. Here's what happened. The most amazing thing, I know for an absolute fact that my higher power is strong and powerful. A few weeks later, about a month later, this little gal named Gua came to the meeting. That year we had 15 kids coming to the meeting. 5 of them are pregnant. This little gal named Gua comes in there. She's just round. And she says, I want my baby to be born clean and sober. And she was just fighting hard to have that happen. She said, last weekend I was at a party and there was just booze and drugs everywhere and everybody wanted me to use and I wanted to use in the worst way. And she says, so I went into the bathroom, which I always tell them, bathroom sanctuary. Go in there, people don't want to be with you. You can pray undisturbed. She says, I went into the bathroom, just like you said. She said, and I went in there and I prayed to that God you were talking about. And she says, I walked out of that bathroom, I walked out of that house, and I went home and I went to bed. And she didn't use or abuse that night. And I'm telling you what, when she said, I prayed to that God you were talking about, she didn't say I was praying to my God or any kind of higher power I believe in. She was talking to the one that Courtney and I believed in. And that was strong enough to get her through. And I want to tell you, anybody that's new and having trouble with that, I'll loan you mine right now. Because he's got the juice. He can handle you. I'm not kidding you. You talk about God helping me to get things square in my life. That spring, I got to hold her baby while she was standing up there getting her diploma, and that was just awesome. I did a little anonymous thing for her. One of the gals in my home group has a beauty shop, and so I said, get her over there and do whatever she needs done or wants done, and we'll do it. Man, she had nails, she had makeup, she had hair. She walked up there and looked like $1,000. And I mean, she just spent 9 months pregnant in her last year of high school, and some of you women may identify, she didn't feel too pretty. Well, on graduation, she felt pretty, and I'm standing there back there holding that little baby, and I'm having a hell of a time keeping it together. If you're out there and you think you've got something that's so bad in your life that you can't divulge it to anybody, it's going to kill you. I'm telling you what, in our book it says that our past is the only asset we have when we show up, and it has the power to avert death in others. I guarantee you there's kids alive today because of what goes on in that meeting and these other meetings that we all put on. There's people whose lives get saved. And I feel I do not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. I'm not ashamed of that accident anymore. I don't understand the full implication of it, but I know this. It has helped people have closure who have had kids killed by drivers. It's helped people who have family members kill people, and it's helped kids not drive drunk, whether it's only 1 or 2 times. If anything else happens in my whole time in sobriety, that baby being born clean and sober is the acme of whatever could possibly happen. That's just unbelievable. And for me, there's something my old friend Carl helped me find, and I'll shut down. I like to, we try to explain these spiritual experiences and stuff to everybody, but this is out of the 12 and 12, step 2, page 28. Relieved of the alcohol obsession, their lives unaccountably transformed. They came to believe in a higher power, and most of them began to talk of God. I started talking about God, and I'd have never dreamt that. I didn't do it in bars. Well, I did, but I was not using the name right. But it says lives unaccountably transformed. That means you can't explain it. You can't do it. You can't put it. Then in AA Comes of Age, and it's in the chapter When AA Came of Age, page 44, it says, it may be possible to find explanations of spiritual experiences such as ours, but I have often tried to explain my own and have succeeded only in giving the story of it. I know the feeling it gave me and the results it has brought, but I will never fully understand the deeper why and how. I don't understand it. All I know is it's great. And if you just keep giving this thing away, your life just keeps getting better. You can't catch up with AA. You owe all the time. And this other part here is one of the first threats I heard. And it took me a while to find this one too, but it says, this is in Bill's story, Ebby talking to Bill. He says, for if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. We've all heard this weekend of all the low spots that come at us, even in sobriety, no matter what. It's life. It keeps happening. If he did not work, he would surely drink again. If he drank, he would surely die. Then faith would be dead indeed. With us, it is just like that. This program is so important and so vital. I know that I have no right for me to decide this book needs changing, that this program needs to be changed. It needs to stay exactly the way it was handed to us when they printed this book. Many people with many afflictions have been helped as a result of it by witnessing what happened to the worst bunch in the lot. And they have chosen to have help programs that help. And I'll tell you, if you get a chance to work with young people, this is what's amazing. I'm an old fart, and these little kids just have me in their meeting, and we talk. I don't run the meeting. I get to go to their meeting. And we just talk and we share. They call me. Sometimes they call me drunk, but they call me still after graduation. I get to be around these kids. It's the greatest thing in the world. They shut that school down because of budget cuts at the end of this year. Don't worry. There's a lot of schools down there. We're on a search right now, trying to find one for next year when they start up. But do that, get out there, and there's so many people to help. And I love this program. It is my life. I'm so dedicated to it. I hope that it never changes. I want to stay active. I've been sober over 24 years now, and it is, didn't think I would. And it's been the most exciting time in my life. You know, we try to explain what this life is like to people. Until you've experienced, you really can't even touch it. But I'll tell you what, if you're just new in this program, hang in there and keep coming. There's a fellow named Chris in here this morning. He has 3 weeks today. Where's Chris? Are you still in here? All right. He's sitting right next to an old Montana boy back there. And we got talking about the Long Branch Saloon. I got hauled out of there in an ambulance too. Please, whatever you do, Al-Anon, Alateen, AA, do everything within your power to carry this message to others. It's so important. I look at that school. We've got millions of kids coming at us. Millions of them, totally confused, no grasp on a higher power. We need to share that stuff with them. And one of the things that I really try to remember the most is love and tolerance is our code. If you run into somebody that you think has found this outfit by mistake and they need to have another place, don't do it in front of everybody. Don't chew their hind end out. Take them off to the side and talk with them. Explain that. Allow them the honor of sitting in there a while and figuring out what they are. You know, most of them get here 30 days ago. They didn't know what the hell had them. All of a sudden, they got this term that somebody gave them. They're thrilled to have something. We need to be a little understanding, but we also need to help them. Love and tolerance is our code. And I thank you so much for having me and being so kind as to listen and not go running out the doors. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.